Hi, and welcome to Chat with Sonlight. Today is part 2 of Sunny and Johna in their Ask Me Anything live that they did. And this is our second topic and question that we wanted to cover. So join us.
We also have a question from Bia. She asked, how do you figure out if your child might be dyslexic? So we'll jump into that. We did get some advice from one of our other Sonlight mentors, Sheila. You may know her from the Sonlight Connections app as well, because a couple of her children are dyslexic. And so she gave us information on that. I suspected that my son might be dyslexic at one point, but we found out he had another issue. But before I dive into that, Johna, do you want to comment on some stuff first?
I know what Sheila, our mentor, had said, and the first thing she had talked about was Amy Lykosh and Dr. Karen Halinga have a book called The Cure, and it's not a cure. It is a way to look through your child's vision issues and possible steps in order to find help to help your child. And to me, it is an excellent book. When I was a student back in the day, I love to say I was not thriving. Kindergarten through 5th grade, I probably was in the remedial readings, and the math I struggled with. And I was smart. I could read on my own, and I could add. You give me numbers, I could add them verbally, but writing them down, I couldn't do. So about 5th grade, I had a teacher came and called my mom. She says, I know what her problem is. And it was a vision issue. I wasn't dyslexic. I had a tracking issue with my eyes, but that book goes in detail about even my issue on a couple of chapters. And so had my teacher not found it, had I not gotten glasses at the time, that it was a great relief for my parents and for me to know I wasn't stupid. I was able to go forward and do the things. And in fact, that finally my they used to do IQ test. My IQ test and my ability in school finally matched. Up until then, though, they thought I was in all the remedial classes, and they were hoping I could function as an adult. Guess what? I can.
And you read our tech support. You write for Sonlight. You do all the different things. Obviously, you taught with Sonlight.
I went to college. It was great.
Yeah,
I taught, paid to be taught, not just taught my kids. So.
Well, and I love what you're saying there too about one of the advantages to Sonlight is you don't get or homeschooling is that you don't get those labels that you get in a classroom, like you said, where teachers thought maybe it was a learning issue or something crazy, and it ended up being an eye issue. And this is actually the same with my son. He was writing letters and numbers backwards. I would teach him what letters sounded like on Monday, and on Tuesday he had no recollection of any of it. And I was very, very concerned because my daughter, his older sister, learned to read early, read well. It was never a struggle for her. But it was
the older siblings,
right? The older siblings setting that precedent, right? That it's going to be easy. But when we took him to the eye doctor, it turns out that he's incredibly farsighted, and his eyes have different focal ranges, which is very rare in kids. That's something that as we age, typically our eyes become more farsighted. So really, when most kids can read with a page up here, he had one eye that focused about out there, and then one that was very far away from him. And so he was forgetting letter sounds because he really couldn't distinguish between those similar letters like A and C.
It was a nice blur out there for him.
Yeah, because he just couldn't really see them. So once we got him reading glasses, it was shocking the difference there. So, Bia, I would encourage you to evaluate a bunch of different options. It may not be dyslexia. However, Sheila did give us some good websites as well for evaluating that. And we'll drop that in the comments at the end of the the recording of this event, so that you can go straight to that site and check it out. She said her son did have some of those dyslexia symptoms, but not all of them. Also, there's Orton Gillingham products like All About Spelling that can be helpful for students who really struggle with this. Plus, there's dyslexia, there's dysgraphia, dyscalculia. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but there's a bunch of different things that all relate to how your eyes see. and then what they can read and write. So we will make sure that those links are in there as well, so you can look at that.
One thing I put in there, we hadn't talked about, the Spell You See that we carry is written by Dr. Karen Halinga, who she designed it for children who are dealing with, some learning disabilities, because you don't learn spelling like our traditional way of spelling. You learn to chunk letter combinations and stuff. And I think it's a great program because you practice good writing. They gave you paragraphs to copy. You are putting your spelling words into a paragraph as opposed to a list, and you're not memorizing all the at words or all the am words or all the, whatever the spelling is. You're learning great writing at the same time as learning your spelling and the rules without formally learning. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there are resources out there. Like I said, we'll put them in the replay. Also, Sheila is a great resource if you have dyslexic kids, if you're wondering about that, because she educated hers with Sonlight all the way. So there are options and ways to flex that even if they struggle to read themselves. We do have a question in the app. John, I apologize. I'm not seeing them on Facebook. So if you can monitor that, I'm going to look at the app because we do have a question about if it's okay if the couch subjects. So for those of you unfamiliar with Sonlight, those are the ones that you do on a couch or a comfy chair, like reading together. If they end up a couple of weeks ahead of the table subjects. So the table subjects are going to be the things like math, handwriting, any sort of writing that your student is doing at a table. What do you think about that, Johna?
Oh, I believe that it is okay if your couch subjects get ahead of your table subjects. Yes, it's ideal to keep all of your subjects on the same schedule, but if you get a read aloud ahead, or any of those things that are couch where you're cuddling and especially if you're not feeling good, because it came from Emily, who asked us about being ill. Those are great ways to keep the progress going without worrying about handwriting, or did they take a math test, or doing a science experiment. You're making progress. So yes, if you want to read an entire book because that's a good time for this week, read the book. So, and you can get a lot done sitting on that couch.
I agree. I was going to say, too, something else that can be helpful if you do have a child maybe that's feeling great and you're feeling sick, or some other kids are not, lap desks or clipboards are great, or letting the child sit on the floor at a coffee table while everybody else is on the couch. These are all things that I've done after my son was born and I needed to be on the couch. My daughter would sit there on the floor in the living room with her lap desk. We like clipboards for the car. There's some options like that if you do want to try to get those table subjects in. I would caution you on a child that is building a skill to let too much time lapse. So that would be your early elementary kids that are learning to read, they're learning basic math, they're learning how to write, only because those skills kind of build on each other. And so if you go too long between them, they might forget what they've learned, and it's kind of like starting over, as opposed to a subject that you're reading to them, like a history. You can learn history at any time, science minus the experiments, those types of things. But yeah, you absolutely do not have to be on the same week in all your subjects at the same time. I personally like to try to stay on that just because I have kids with a big age gap, and so I don't want one child finishing their year months before the other child does. But yeah, if you've got kids close in age, or if they're kind of all on the same page, then I don't see any issue with it. And several of our Sonlight mentors like to get in all different weeks and all different subjects. John, I know you did a little more of that than I like to do, but does it work out at the end of the year?
Yeah, it works. Sorry, I'm still looking at Facebook trying to make sure I know it. Oh, well. Our app people are on, and I love it. So that's our community.
Yes. So yeah, great community in there. And yeah, keep asking those questions. I do have more though that were asked ahead. So Grace asks about tips for a newly diagnosed ADHD child and parent. So it sounds like both of them are recently diagnosed with ADHD. Any thoughts or suggestions on that?
One, I would tell you, my mom will tell you I am ADHD, never diagnosed. So it's a struggle. So even schooling my kids. I think it's just good to chunk times and keep I think the best thing for me was, what was my goal? Find 3 things I got to get done for the day, get those done. Okay, now I can do 3 more things and break it apart. Don't try to sit there and marathon it out, because even though I'm ADHD, I love to make lists and I want to check them off, and then I will rabbit trail. So do 1, 2. Okay, we're going to go and take 20 minutes and run around and go do something, pick up the house, pick up your bedroom, something, come back, do it again. And I think doing that kind of stuff with a set helps your brain refocus and stay engaged for your 20-minute segments at a time. And I wouldn't go beyond 20 minutes at first with your kid. 20 minutes is a good long time for any child under, I think, 80. So you can break a math set, a math lesson into 2. We're going to do the first half, then we're going to go do 5 jumping jacks, and we're going to come back and we're going to do the second half. If you're doing Matthew C, there's usually 10 or 20 questions. Do half. I think that would be, but it's a learning. You're teaching your child the same as you're teaching yourself at the same time, how to have to handle it hopefully without being medicated, or if you are medicated, how you can be on the lowest end of that dosage, because a lot of it is learning the coping of dealing with it. I think I'm not proof. I'm just a struggler.
But that's a good point. Yeah, we always tell people to try different things. If it doesn't work, try something else, and probably even more so in this case, Grace. If the child is struggling with the hyperactivity piece and wanting to move, things like those giant exercise balls to let a kid sit on and bounce while they're working, or letting them stand at a counter to work, that's enough physical engagement sometimes that it can make it easier to focus. But you might have to check in with that student to make sure they're really paying attention. Same thing for you as the parent. John, I love what you said about pick 3 things to do. Those are your goals. And if you get them done, then add on more, as opposed to a 20-item to-do list, which is going to be overwhelming and all of that. And again, like I said earlier, really focus on prioritizing your health. So what do you need to do to manage things? I know for me, if I'm not sleeping well, I struggle with focus. And so I have to make sure that I'm allowing time for sleep, which is hard because I'm a night owl. I don't want to go to bed, but I know I have to get up early for various things the next day. So that's kind of a discipline thing, but I also function better when I'm well rested. So looking at that, and whatever dietary changes are better for you and your child. I know I really do try to limit processed foods with my kids, even without any diagnoses, just because they seem to do better when they eat less processed food. So yeah, it's going to be an experimental process, I think, because obviously everybody is different. But I think those are some options. Let your kids move around, let yourself move around, but kind of hone in on what your goals are for the day. Go ahead, Johna.
No, sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry.
I could talk all day, so no. If you need to cut me off, go for it.
Well, one, I was going to encourage the mom's Grace, right?
Yes.
I was going to encourage you, Grace, document what you're doing. So you're here in September, document, you just have your diagnosis for both of you. What is your game plan? And then document what works and what doesn't work. And then when you figure out what's working, you need to contact me so you can tell me how to make that work. And then we'll even talk even deeper, but that you're working on something that a lot of us battle. And so you're not alone, but you are somewhere, I don't have a child that I'm dealing with at this time, but like Sunny said, we dropped a lot of our sugars, a lot of processed food, and watch for hidden dyes in food. Dyes actually are a friend of mine when I used to work full-time long time ago. His daughter was ADHD, and they totally removed anything with any dyes of any kind out of her diet, as well as all processed sugars. And he said it was a 180 change in their child. So I'm not trying to medicate your child. I'm just saying all of us, I think, as America, could get rid of the processed sugar, and we could get rid of the processed dyes and we'd probably be all healthier. And I say that as I would like to have a Coke and drink it, but I don't. Look, I have water.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I'm a little crunchy myself. So yeah, I'm always looking for how do I research, new things. And yeah, it's definitely, it can be scary, but I have to say, in talking to parents who have pulled their kids from school because they were on various IEPs that were not working with homeschooling, you really do have that option to customize the education to the child and how they learn best, and get in the community and ask other parents in the same boat, because they're out there. We see these questions all the time, and you can see solutions that have worked for other people that might also work for you. And yeah, I love what you said, Johna. Grace, if you find something works, please share that with us, share it with the community, because it is a battle and a struggle that a lot of our families deal with. And we guarantee you that people will be helped by that. And there's also some options out there that other people have tried as well. Let's move on to, I'm not sure, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It's either Aylin or Island, maybe. She is doing the second grade curriculum with her son, and they are in language arts, where they had to do a journal entry as one of their written assignments. She said she's struggling with him quite a bit because he has so much trouble spelling words. How can she help? Can she spell everything out loud for him while he writes? I think it's a situation where she's not quite sure what she should be having him struggle through on his own versus what she should be doing for him. What are your thoughts with a second grader and their writing?
Oh, on a second grader, I scribe. I mean, at a second grade, they're still learning motor skills, and they can write, and your child can write, but you get 2 or 3 sentences in, and they're exhausted, and their hand hurts, and they can't express it. But be their scribe, and if you want to spell the word out loud to them, spell it out to them. If they're still writing, I think that's phenomenal. One of my kids would have milked it till they were in 10th grade for me to scribe if they could. They did not get that far, but they would prefer me to let me dictate what you want is that creative juices going, and you want them to be free with how they would write their journal. And if it unhinders them in their ability to write by letting you do the writing for them, then I would, because part of that process is not the physical writing. That process is getting that creativeness going, and some handwriting is getting them to write it for you. And so if you can, and the copy work, dictation, but you're not dictating at second grade, you're still doing copy work. So
well, and that's something important to remember too. Yeah, is that language arts is a variety of skills, right? You're learning to read, you're learning to write, you're learning to spell. Oftentimes those creative expression prompts, that is to get their creative juices thinking, get the thoughts out there and on paper. So Johna mentioned scribing. My younger child is in 4th grade, and I still scribe for him on some of those longer assignments because his brain goes so fast on the creative side that there's no way his hand can keep up at this age. I mean, even if you think about it, when I write now and I'm typing, I still talk out loud to myself as I'm writing things so that I don't lose my train of thought. And then drafts, right? Every writer has rough drafts that they do before they present a final paper. So yeah, I absolutely think you can spell the words for him. If he's writing in 2nd grade, that's amazing. A lot of kids just don't have the hand-eye coordination yet at that age to do that super well. So that's amazing. But also, feel free to let him make mistakes, and then you come back and correct them later, or scribe for him. To make that easier. Or I know Sheila and others, as we mentioned her earlier, Sonlight mentor, she taught one of her children to type very early because handwriting was hard. I want to say he was in 2nd or 3rd grade and learning to type. So you don't have to wait if you find typing is easier for that child as well.
Thank you for joining us today. Do you have an idea for a podcast topic, or do you want to chat with Sonlight on an upcoming episode? Email us at connections@sonlight.com.